there are a lot of people here who are specifically trying to figure out what it takes to be a good Scrum Master. And I often hear people talk about, hey, I am applying for a Scrum Master role, I'm interviewing, but they say I don't have experience. So how do I get experience without experience, right? So that's just a brief introduction, and that yes, I am the Scrum Mother, and I just want to say welcome to this world and my words of wisdom. And I always like to say thank you first and foremost for being here, because there are a lot of other things that you could be doing with your Wednesday evening. And I want to say thank you for being with us. And my goal is for this to be one of the most productive times of your days. And a specific shout out to the people here who did learn about this on TikTok, Instagram, or even LinkedIn. And I know we got Lightspeed as well as myself posted about it. So thank y'all for joining us. To kick off, yes, I am the Scrum Mother, and I am on TikTok and Instagram. So just want to say, feel free to follow, like, comment, tag, share as you wish throughout the presentation on any of those platforms. I would greatly appreciate it. And just a fun fact is that the Scrum Mother term is actually a term a previous teammate gave me. Can always talk to you about that story later. Aside from that, I am a senior Scrum Master at Cvent and very proud to be part of what we call the Cvent Nation. I am 100% remote, based out of the Atlanta area. And for those of you who are in the Atlanta area, I'm specifically in Sugar Hill, or OTP, as some of you might see on anything Atlanta related. And then finally, a fun fact about me is food is my favorite food. So for all the fellow foodies out there, you can also follow me on on Twitter and Instagram at Table Booth or Bar. I'm always posting about food, drinks, and sometimes the bathrooms, because you know those can always be really interesting. But more so about getting into why we're actually here. When talking to Olivia and Audrey about this, it's the number one question I get asked on any time I talk to people who are interested in the Scrum Master role. But more so, I feel like often in the Agile community, we tend to make Agile way more complicated than it is. And we somehow put it in a box. And no, I don't think you can just walk into an organization and just do Agile. I do not think that, which we'll talk about later, about formal training. However, but there are skills that anyone can practice. And for the purposes of my presentation, I'm going to focus on my niche of the Scrum Master role. Almost every time I talk to someone, as I mentioned, they talk about this Scrum Master role and what it means. And so today I'm going to go over the skills that I believe you can start enhancing today to start working your way in that direction. I will not be going through Agile Scrum 101 or non-Scrum Master roles, though those questions are still welcome. So feel free, if you have any questions about Scrum, just know that my particular niche for this presentation will be about the Scrum Master role. And then we can circle back to them during the Q&A session. But then my primary objective is for you to walk away with at least one practical thing you can change or work on tonight to get experience as a Scrum Master. And by the end, you might even say, well, I actually already have these skills. And hopefully we'll be better able to articulate how your non-Scrum Master work correlates to the Scrum Master role, which is often really the case that I deal with when I talk to people who I'm coaching, is that, okay, you're already doing these things, so it's just not conveying on your resume or something. So hopefully that's what we'll talk about. But why do I feel like I might be a good person to talk about this experience? So I'll go over just a little bit of what my Agile journey has been up to this point. So I actually have a unique experience of having worked for a Agile consultancy company, to where I was an engagement analyst. You could think like a business analyst, operations analyst kind of a thing. It's there that I got certified as a Scrum Master and a product owner. I then left that company to go be a fully dedicated product owner, which was actually the role I was pursuing. That is the career I was pursuing. And then within 3 months of that role, I got asked to temporarily be a Scrum Master for the team too. And I was operating as product owner and Scrum Master at the same time. And just the way things unfolded, I ended up really loving the Scrum Master role. And so I decided to pursue a fully dedicated Scrum Master role. So thus, here we are today, where I am a fully dedicated Scrum Master for Cvent. And I just got promoted to Senior Scrum Master back in December. So that's actually really exciting. And the environment that I have, here maybe Mother Nature saying hello back behind me. The environment that I work in is that I have 3 fully dedicated teams. So I am fully dedicated to 3 teams as their Scrum Master. One is in DC. I have 2 in Dallas, Texas, where my department is actually based. So the product teams, the marketing, client success folks actually live in Dallas. And then we have team members in India, and the India team has their own contract Scrum Master, but I do the majority of the reporting, and I have to know how my teams in the US impact that team, and how that team, what they're doing impacts my US based teams. And so I have always been remote to 75% of my teams, but now I am fully remote going forward. Actually, the whole company is at the moment, but I will be permanently. But the disclaimer is throughout this presentation that my company truly supports myself and my colleagues venturing out and expanding our sphere of influence. But the following information is my experience and not necessarily industry standard, nor the opinions of the companies I work for. I actually just met with HR today just to confirm that that is the case. But they're very excited for me to even say that I work for Cvent. So I do work for Cvent, but I'm here representing myself. And before we get into that life as a Scrum Master, before I get into experience as a Scrum Master, when I was talking to Olivia and Audrey about this, I feel like I need to give you my Scrum Master elevator speech as to what I think it takes to be a great Scrum Master before we can talk about the skills that we can start enhancing. There will be more in here, but this is it in a nutshell as to what I think makes a good Scrum Master. Our whole job is to help people deliver value. And our whole job is to make sure that all voices are heard, to bring everyone to the table that needs to be there, and to ensure that we're removing blockers and impediments to anything that keeps that from happening. Okay? So I tell people the 2 components that I think make a great Scrum Master are operations and compassion. And we cannot have one without the other. I would say that we can't have operations without compassion, and that agile keeps the people in project. But we can't have compassion without getting shit done, right? So the summary that I put of a Scrum Master is we're the get shit done people, right? We focus on the team health and individual health, but ultimately the goal is because somebody's paying us to do a job. Okay, so that gives you context to what I have in store for y'all in terms of how we can build on these skills. Again, please put any questions in the chat and I will come back to it. But I can't see the chat right now, and I can't see you raising your hand. So I promise I will come back to them. So when it comes to, all right, so that's what I think it takes to be a good Scrum Master. And you may already be applying, you may already be interviewing, but you're just getting this feedback that either one, you're not getting calls back about your resume, or in the interview, they just say, hey, we just need someone with more experience. This is my personal opinion, but I feel like that experience can be broken down into formal training and informal training. And for the purposes of this presentation, the formal training, I'm going to just do a brief highlight because one, you are already doing it, right? You are making use of the resources, getting your foot in the door, putting yourself around people who are in the industry. That is the formal training that I would say we start with. When I talk about formal training, there's obviously professional certifications, but there's just a lot of things that are already available to us that not a lot of people talk about or don't consider formal training, but Scrum Alliance, Agile Alliance, LifeSpeed, YouTube, LinkedIn Learning, there's already a lot of so many resources that are free, right, to take a look at. So you would be amazed how many people I talk to, they say, well, how do I get a job? I said, well, first of all, find a local meetup to get to know other professionals in your area. And then when I follow up with this person week or few weeks later, they have not done that. And honestly, this is just a reminder that sometimes it's all about who you know. Not always, because actually the job at Cvent, I did not know anyone who worked there, but still, it's about meeting people, showing up, getting your name known, and that starts with this. And then, of course, the literature around what we call formal training. First of all, the 2020 Scrum Guide or any updates to the Scrum Guide and the Agile Manifesto. So those are things that anyone who wants to be involved in Scrum, specifically a Scrum Master, do need to know. Scrum.org actually also has additional literature that they have for people who are considering being a Scrum Master. So I do have that resource at the end of this presentation. So when we send it out, you'll have these links. And then, of course, there are tons of Agile blogs and podcasts that are very, very fascinating. And they are from professionals who are not only in industry, but they specifically the consulting companies, they work with Agile all over the world. So just make sure that you are taking advantage of those resources. And just a little plug, when I talk about resources, I'm also saying things, objects, that as a Scrum Master, I say people are not resources, right? So that's also one thing about the compassion coming up, is that resources are things that are disposable, people are not. All right, so I'm going to take just a deep breath here. And again, go ahead and put any questions that you have about that. But I want to spend the majority of the rest of this presentation on the informal training part. Okay. The informal training, what I hope you get out of this is when I think about my daily life as a Scrum Master and what I do, what are things that you can start doing today to implement those skills? Again, some of you may already be doing these things, but I hope they're going to be very practical, right? And they are not about the resume. They are not about the verbiage you put on your LinkedIn, but they are skills to help you get yourself in the right position. All right, so we talk about Kanban. Kanban is the #1 thing I tell people you can start doing today. Some people also, even Scrum Masters, say, well, how do I get my team to do X, Y, and Z? And I say, do it yourself. Start with yourself. Be the example. Kanban is to do, doing, done. You can customize the columns. I have a personal Kanban board, and I have to do, this week, doing, blocked, done, and canceled, and things that I won't do. Okay. You can also have a physical board, or you can have a virtual board. I have virtual board at the moment through Trello. I also have just to-do list and reminders on my Android calendar phone. Through sometimes you can have on my Android, but I think Apple phones have it too, iPhones, where you have notes and you can create checklists. That's essentially starting Kanban, right? And what this will do is this will put you to where you're already practicing what you preach. You're already saying, I know what it's like to look at a backlog, and you're already practicing what it takes to understand what are blockers and what are things that might get in the way. Okay. The second thing is public speaking. This is a fear of a lot of people. I put the key takeaway here. I talk to people all day long. All day long. It might be one-on-ones. It might be 2 or 3 people. On our demos, I have 50+ people on my demos. I present and do facilitation all day, every day. Okay, now granted, also I have 3 teams, so I have ceremonies every single day times 3. So anytime you get the opportunity to present or facilitation, I told you I want you to walk away with practical things you can do. Some things you can start doing today, if you haven't already, is you can go do a Facebook Live, an Instagram Live, and TikTok, if you have over 1,000 followers, will let you do a TikTok Live. And for those of you who are coming from TikTok, you know I made that mistake this week trying to go live and realized I couldn't do it. But, and I say that we are essentially professional MCs, because so anything you can do to help hone your public speaking skills will be very, very beneficial. I have been a member of Toastmasters International, which is an organization to help you become a better public speaker. So if this is something that is an area that you would like to improve, again, this resource is going to be included in the presentation, and you can find a local chapter near you in person, online, or hybrid. Number 3, retrospectives. Again, if people are talking to me about what we can do to start doing things in an agile way, preparing to be a Scrum Master, I would say retrospectives are our thing. We game on with retrospectives. So my team work in 2-week increments. So I do a retrospective with each of my teams every 2 weeks, but sometimes we do it more often. Sometimes we do it less often just because of holidays coming up. And sometimes we do a retrospective over a specific theme. All right, so if you are not yet a Scrum Master, but you want to practice retrospectives, these are things I have particularly done on my own. So personally, you can, anytime you say, how is my life going? A lot of people tend to do that around birthdays or around New Year's resolutions naturally, right? That is an agile practice that most people already do without knowing it. Vision boards. Those of you come from a business background, there's SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Those are things you can do on yourself. And again, before you start having a retrospective for a team, if you're not practicing this on your own and trying to get better and continuous improvement on your own, then that's where you should start. Career-wise, if you are applying for an interview, and specifically those of you who are applying to be a Scrum Master, do not leave your interview without asking this. Intentionally save the last 5 minutes of your interview to do a retrospective live in person. And the person you're interviewing may not always have an answer to this, but that's okay, because it's your job to show you have the skills. So just saying, what about my skills are you most excited about? What would you like to see me improve? It shows you have confidence. It shows you know what you're talking about. It already puts you in saying, okay, you're comfortable asking an interviewer this, who you may not get the job. You might actually be comfortable about doing that elsewhere as well. And then just, you can do one over your current performance review. You can do a performance retrospective over yourself. What is going well? What are areas of improvement? And what are action items, next steps? Okay. For a team, you can do this any day with any team. You can even start with your family. You can do this with a spouse. You can do this with your children or a partner or your sporting event. I don't know, any opportunity. Anytime you walk out of a meeting, go, hey, how do you think that went? You're doing a retrospective without knowing it. But then with your teams or your family, you can say, hey, let's sit down and do, some people call it family meetings. Hey, what's going really well? What do you love? What are current challenges that we're experiencing? And what would you like to see us do better? So the key takeaways around the retrospective is getting comfortable with giving and receiving feedback. Recently had someone apply for a Scrum Master role who said that they don't take feedback very well. Probably not going to be good in a lot of different ways. Just Scrum Master role is not going to be exciting to them. Get comfortable with conflict. Sometimes we have to deal with some really uncomfortable situations, individually, as a team, and sometimes even at the product level where we go, we are at risk of missing our deadlines. Somebody has to be able to acknowledge that, and somebody has to be able to step in to say, hey, let's rally the troops. We need a game plan. Okay. And it's just regular check-ins. Another thing that you can do, just regular check-in with anybody. You could be a friend, could be a family member, could be about yourself, about your relationship, or about your team. But the main thing is, I think as a Scrum Master, we are always focused on continuous feedback and continuous improvement. Just a slight thing that some people might disagree with me on. That's why I say that Agile project management is more like a sister to traditional project management, because we do the same things. It's just quicker. It happens more often. Traditional project management, you still do a review, you still plan, you still see how things went. It just usually happens at the end of the project. So we just take that and go, okay, instead of at the end of the project, we're going to do it more often and more frequently. All to make sure that we are delivering a product that people want and need. And then I also made a note here that I have done retrospectives on our team retrospectives. We actually have had two times, probably once a year I do this, where I meet with all my teams. We go through all of the Scrum ceremonies, say, what do you love? What do you not love? What can we do better? All right, this is another one that can get really uncomfortable for people. Talking to stakeholders or anyone that you don't know. Get comfortable talking to people at all levels of an organization. Walking down the street, be comfortable meeting strangers. Honestly, people talk about the elevator and talking to, and the role of not talking to anyone in an elevator. But seriously, being able to go up to someone and say, hi, I'm Katrina. I work with Business Transient, which is the department I work for. I'm the Scrum Master. I haven't met you. Can we chat? Or sometimes that initial thing is, hey, you're the person I've been needing to talk to. I've got an issue I need to resolve. A lot of times I have to reach out to people I've never met before, and I have to be confident in doing it. So have your elevator speech ready. Even if it's just a skill you're trying to acquire about getting comfortable talking to strangers, just say, what do you want them to know? Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm a senior Scrum Master for Cvent. What do you do? Right? And if talking to persons from levels above your pay grade makes you uncomfortable, seek out a mentor specifically at that level. At the company I told you, at the Agile consultancy company I work for, I happen to work really closely with the COO at the same time, the Chief Operating Officer. So I got to see how executives view the company, view Agile, and how to, from their perspective of how to communicate with them. So if this is something that you struggle with, get a mentor who's willing to walk you through that. So then the key takeaway here is job titles do matter. There is hierarchy. I happen to work for a company that they want us to treat everything we do like we are the entrepreneur, and that we take ownership, but there's still levels of the organization, and we need to be comfortable talking to everybody. And then stakeholders, users, and buyers are people too, right? If that helps you at all, just ask them what they need, ask them how to help them be more successful, what's going well, and what are challenges. And then the final one that everyone always pushes back on. Yes, be the person to take meeting minutes. Be the note taker. I don't care who you are. This tends to fall on many of the women in teams, but I'm telling you, no matter who you are, be the first to show up and the last to leave. Repeat back what you heard, ask questions to clarify, and make sure everyone is on the same page. Okay, how many times I'm in a meeting where I take notes, I follow up and say, and people always come back, no, that's not what we talked about. Hey, why don't you add this? I think we missed this part, right? Because as a Scrum Master, in order for us to identify and or remove blockers and impediments, this whole Hamilton thing, we need to be in the room where it happens. And we need to so-called read between the lines. I joke that a Scrum Master's role is to prevent forest fires, smell the smoke before anyone else, and then also be able to rally the teams when we know what's happening. right? We have to truly read between the lines, track patterns, follow up on promises, which actually, a side note, be willing to learn in this take notes section, because I have our sprint releases are every 2 weeks. They are on Tuesday evenings at 10 p.m. Eastern time. I am not required to go to those as a Scrum Master. Some of you may have seen this on my social media. That is actually the ceremony. I try to be quiet. I don't even, we communicate on Zoom and on Slack, and I don't even like to hit any emojis. I am there as an observer, but also if something gets rolled back and we don't release it on time, if I don't go, I have to rely on somebody to tell me what happened. I have to rely on somebody to keep me updated as to when it's actually going to follow through. But if I'm there, I'm learning about what the developers are doing. I'm showing team morale by showing up and being with them at the same time. Sometimes we've had releases that took 3 or 4 hours, and I got done at 2 a.m. in the morning. And then it also makes sure that we can follow up and we don't have to rely on anybody to do that. So it helps us learn, it helps team morale, and then it also helps us do our job better. So then a summary of that is, if you don't like any of these things, or if you know for a fact that you hate these things, if you hate going to meetings, if you hate doing trainings, if you hate conflict, if you hate doing retros, if you hate having a to-do list, taking notes, talking to strangers, or talking to people at all levels of an organization, I will tell you, you might be better for another role. And overall, if you prefer being an individual contributor that just doesn't care about the work, or if the client stays or goes, or if you hate meetings, or if you just prefer developing and building good products, that's okay too. That these might be other things that you might realize that you will hate being a Scrum Master, or you just might not be a very good one. And then to wrap it up, these are a list of the resources. I will get with Audrey, Sanjeev, and Olivia and the LifeSpeed team to see if there's anything else they want to add to this based off the presentation. But we will send this out so that you can look at all the websites and the references that we talked, to make sure that you, again, can walk away with at least one thing, with one practical thing you can do even tonight. Walk out of here to start trying to improve. And if you haven't done that, then definitely give me that feedback. If you go, I did not learn one practical thing I can do today, then my objective has not been reached. So, and doing a retrospective, please put that in the chat too. If there's something that you found the most beneficial, things that were maybe not as beneficial, or, and then of course, finally, if you just said this was a waste of my time and there's nothing practical here I can do. But if you do feel that way, please post a solution about what you think you actually would have been more beneficial to you. And so that's my life as a Scrum Master, and very practical things. As I said, you can follow me on, actually this LinkedIn's not correct. It's Katrina LC the Scrum Mother, Instagram and TikTok at the Scrum Mother, or you can email me at thescrummother@gmail.com. But thank you again for having me. I really appreciate your time.